Dr. Simon Raybould is with us today, and on Get Good at Presenting the podcast. But also, we're going to use this for some videos. And the reason why I've asked Simon to be here, I've known Simon for, oh gosh, I don't know, 10, 15 years, Simon, maybe, I think.
I try to ignore it and talk to my therapist about it occasionally, Lee.
Yes, so quite a while. But Simon did a talk a couple of weeks ago, which I saw, and I just thought, wow, I want to talk more about that. And I want him to share it with the world a little bit. Now, Simon is, like myself, is a speaker and presentation coach and works with people on presenting and storytelling and story making, I think you call it, don't you, Simon? And all of that good stuff. The background for me, Simon, is, I haven't told you all this, is obviously I've been speaking, and I've been a speaker for over 30 years now, 17 years full-time professional speaker. And you taught me stuff that I didn't know, and you made me really think. And I thought, oh, right, yeah, that's great, because it was based on good research. So I guess I just want people to share that, is how you can tell stories, why you should tell stories, and what kind of stories, I think, is one of the things that you are key on.
If I remember rightly as well, it wasn't just the content was interesting for you. I looked up at one point and I could see you with tears of laughter coming down your face as well, which was quite... it was nice, but off-putting, I have to say. Yeah, the whole storytelling.
You made me laugh really a lot, like I haven't laughed for a while, and you kind of made me think all at the same time, which was so annoying, but it was brilliant. So.
Well, the whole story-making thing came about because you hear so many people just going, tell stories, tell stories, tell stories, tell stories, like some kind of parrot on acid. But they don't tell people what kind of stories, where, when, or how. Yeah. And the analogy I use all the time is if you just tell random stories, it's a bit like blindfolding yourself in an archery competition. You might hit the target, but your chances are an awful lot better if you're actually got your eyes open and looking at it. So you will know, I don't know if other people do, but you will know I spent 24 years as a research scientist, and I ended up manager of what was then the UK's largest social science research unit. So I've got a science research background. And I just applied that process, the scientific rigor process, to looking at the use of stories to find out what kind of stories worked under what circumstances. And it turns out, it'll surprise nobody, I think, it turns out that the big, epic, heroic stories that we all go, oh my God, that's amazing, they're not very effective in terms of getting people to change their behaviours. They're great entertainment. That's the whole point of Hollywood. They're astonishing entertainment, but they reduce what's called self-efficacy, which is the belief that we can do it. Yeah. And if we don't believe we can do it, we don't try. So these big, heroic Hollywood blockbuster type epic stories, they make me feel like I can't do it, so I give up. So silly example, stupid example. My local gym has free sessions on a Saturday morning, which I really should go to. And the story they're using to sell these sessions to me is all about being fit and strong and powerful and attractive and all of that kind of jazz. But part of that story is also that it is run by an ex-SAS trainer. Now, at that point, I just go, no, I'm a 62-year-old bloke. I'm really fit for my age, but I'm a 62-year-old bloke, and you're going to put me in a class full of mid-20s trained by somebody who used to train the SAS. And there's a bit of my mind just going, no, the story there is too distant from me. I can't get it. And at the other end of the scale, there's those stories which you can tell in pubs just for a giggle, about how the photocopier hates you. It's true. The more urgent the document is, the greater the chances of the printer screwing up. That just seems to be an ineffable law of life. Sure, yeah. And those stories are great for establishing kind of rapport with your audience because they've all been in that position where the printer jams, that kind of stuff. But again, they don't change the world. They just go, for the audience's point of view, they are like me, which is, it's a useful tool. Yeah. Establishing rapport is a good start. Yeah. But the stories that really change people's behaviours are the ones that are in the middle. We call them hope-so stories in my jargon, and we jokingly talk about the dragon scale. Stories you tell in the pub, if you can finish the story and it goes, and then I found a tenner, that's a pub-sized story.
Yeah.
Other at the upper end of the scale, you tell these big epic stories, and if the only way to top it is the phrase, "and then the dragons came," it's probably too epic a story for people in presentations. But these hope-so stories in the middle, these are stories about people just managing within the realms of normal. So if you think of a zone of confidence or comfort, these are stories that are just on the edge of it.
Yeah.
Just maybe even on the outside of it, but not wildly on the outside of it.
So
and then I started to go, okay, that's all about the size of the story. What about the hero of the story, and all of that kind of jazz.
Yeah.
And I've probably talked for too long without taking a breath. Your turn, Lee.
You tell a good story. So let me ask a couple of questions there. So one of the things as a speaker, so I call myself a motivational speaker. I don't like the title. I've probably told you this, but you call yourself that because that's literally what people put into Google. Yesterday, I was working in the public sector doing a motivational talk. That's how they found me. They put that into Google. They felt that I was the right fit. But I'm fully aware that when I go into that room, a massive big story is not relevant to them. So how do you... So the little stories is something that I guess I've learned naturally. I think because I didn't know any theories about stuff, I think I learned a lot of the stuff the hard way. So you just think, oh, that works, but you don't know why it works, right?
Don't know why.
So you just think, oh, that works.
Yeah.
So I probably specialise in creating engagement. I think engagement, connection is one of the things that I do. Well, other people say that's what I do fairly well. So how do you create engagement stories, but yet still maybe have something that's a bit bigger? So how do you manage the two? Do you know what I mean? Between the pub stories, the connection stories.
First job is to find those stories, and we've all got them. It's just that we don't notice them. The analogy here is really that fish don't see water. They're just going through the water. They don't see it's there. We go through our lives without noticing the cool things that are happening in it and around it. So first things first, the job is to get yourself out of living your life to observe your life, almost as an outsider, if you see what I mean. And then you can go, oh, that bit's cool. Oh, that bit, that's really cool. But you need to find tools for doing that. And there are a whole bunch, and they are so embarrassingly simple. I mean, breathtakingly embarrassingly simple. My favourite is what I call channel your inner David Attenborough. And it is literally just to go through your memory of the day, narrating it, So here we see Dr. Simon Raybould in his native environment, sitting with a light on one side, a Mac computer in front of him, and a cup of tea to the side. And then you've got the kind of go, cup of tea to the side of a computer sounds like a recipe for disaster. Yes, it is. Have I got any stories about spilling cups of tea on a laptop? I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that it might make me look like an idiot. But you narrate the day, and sometimes narrating it out loud is fun. So, a stupid example, driving up the A19, actually, genuinely, coming back from Leeds, I did a gig in Leeds, driving up the A19 to my hometown of Newcastle. Yeah. I am doing this narration thing out loud in the car to practice it, and I had a conversation with myself that went, there's 3 police cars parked on the hard shoulder with a civilian car between them. That's interesting. I wonder why there are 3 police cars there. Oh, one of the police cars has an armed guard in it. I wonder. Oh, hell. There are 3 police cars with armed police in it. What's going on there? But if I'd just been driving and I'd not been telling myself the stuff of what was going on, I wouldn't have bothered noticing that, because the driver part of my brain had gone, that's no threat. Carry on down the road, which is what you're supposed to do as a driver. You just look for threats constantly and ignore those things that aren't dangerous, But by having this narration thing, it makes a huge difference. Or there's another technique. So
let me just pause you there. Because narration technique's great, but for me, what I always tell people is you've got to record this stuff. So what I find is that people, because I work with like busy executives or leaders or something, and they get through their day and they forget what's happened in the day. And it's a little interaction. It could be that stuff. And then they get to work, or they get a phone call 1 minute after they've gone past those police cars with the armed guards. They get a phone call, and then, of course, it's gone out of their brain. So,
should I show you how I do it?
Please tell us how to record it, because I'm all into like writing stuff down all the time, yeah.
Hey Siri, take a note.
It's doing it on my phone now.
What do you want it to say?
And my Siri's just gone, what do you want it to say? That's it. Okay, cancel Siri. That's it. If you've got an Android phone, the app is there as well. Or if you're wearing a smartwatch, you just tap the watch and you start to record. Or if you've got 5 seconds and it's safe to do so, just write down 3 words or tell somebody. Now, they don't have to be anybody who's interested. But the research is pretty clear that just the process of telling somebody the story starts to fix it in your head. Yeah. So if you've got an option, within a few minutes or even hours if you need to, tell somebody the story. So if you walk into your office, tell the receptionist. They're paid by you, so that's okay. They can't be bored. They've got a fake interest. Or phone your spouse, or phone a recording system, or just say it out loud. Almost anything that does that. Now, personally, I use an app called Notion, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. But I use an app called Notion because it sits on every operating system and my phone and my laptop and my computer and in the cloud. So if I just say something to Notion once, it appears in all those other places, so I've got the story to use later on. Yeah. And because I'm an anal retentive pedant and because I'm a professional speaker, I then go back and I catalogue these stories so that I've got them ready to deploy. That's overkill for, quotes, normal people, but you get the idea. But the point is, you literally just say it out loud, and if you can say it to a recording device, so much the better. I will bet you my fee for today's interview, Lee. I am getting paid, right? I will bet you my fee. I will bet you my fee for today's interview that just the process of saying the story, telling the story, once, maybe twice, but certainly just once, is all you need to start fixing it in your head, certainly for long enough for you to have captured it later on.
So before we move on, let me look at a little bit deeper on the David Attenborough thing. Sometimes I think that we don't capture stories because we don't notice stuff as well. So we pass through. So yesterday I was doing this event it was in a football stadium, a small football stadium, and the stadium is connected to a community centre, like a leisure centre, and it has a cafe, a leisure centre and everything. And then in the middle of that, there's like an open library. So the library has moved in. And as I walked through, I was really struck, like, this is the centre of their community. And I actually really loved it, because there was an NHS thing on first floor. Second floor was me and the banqueting conferencing suites, and then there was a couple of NHS officers, and then there was this cafe, and then there was mums and dads and pensioners and people just hanging out. And I thought, this is amazing. Like, why doesn't every little town and every city have these kind of centres? And so me, I mean, it's the tiniest thing, but honestly, I was like, this is brilliant.
Easiest thing in the world.
Got this?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on to observe that. And the easiest thing in the world is literally just to set a timer on your watch for practice. You don't need to do this for very long, but just set a timer on your watch to go bleep every 20 minutes and spend 10 seconds going, what's happened in the last 20 minutes that is different from what I normally experience?
Yeah. Very good.
You don't need to do that for very long, because once you've done that for a bit, you get into the hobby of it. I was going to say, sorry, you get into the habit of it.
Yes.
So you're not going to annoy people for very long. I mean, your watch going bleep every 20 minutes is really going to hack people, but you're not going to do it for very long because you get into the habit really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
It is almost like a lifestyle change to...
It is, yeah. And it's quite an easy one to make. Yeah.
To do. Anyway, I'm just reflecting on that. I was creating a story about your thing about stories, but we'll move on.
Well, the other one of my favourite techniques was invented by a friend of mine called Kennedy, who's an email marketing guru. He sends an email every day, 365, every day of the year.
Wow!
And they always start with a story, and then there's the learning thing that comes out of that. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of that structure. But the fact that he's spent 5 years, 365 days a year, he's got stories, right? He's got stories.
Yeah.
And the way he finds them is to ask himself this question. Don't ask yourself, what interesting things have happened in the last day, or the last hour, or the last week, or whatever. Because you're trained to go, well, nothing interesting has happened. Ask yourself the question, what's the least boring thing that has happened?
Very good.
Now, by definition, there must be something which is less boring than everything else.
Yeah.
And if everything in your life is boring, that in itself is interesting. The very fact that you have had an entire 24 hours where nothing has happened, that in itself is interesting, because it means that there's something fundamentally wrong with your life. But it's a really nice little turnaround, isn't it? This idea of just asking for the least boring instead. And then there's the third trick that clients use quite a lot is to hack your RAS, to hack what's called your reticular activating system. Don't worry about the jargon, but your reticular activating system is the bit that gets your brain to filter out anything that's not important, because you don't have the processing power to process everything that's not a threat. So your subconscious goes, that's not a threat, and your forebrain never even knows that the damn thing exists. Okay, but you can hack that by giving it a target. And everybody will have experienced this. If I say to you, how many yellow cars are you going to pass on this journey? You know what? Normally, you would never have spotted yellow cars.
That's right, yeah.
But now you'll see the beggars everywhere. Because your subconscious is primed.
Absolutely,
so if you say to yourself, I need a story about X, lo and behold, that story will appear, not because you are consciously looking for it, but because you become subconsciously aware of when that thing does happen.
I see, yes. So you can almost you can preload your reticular activation system.
Activating system, just put the RAS. RAS,
Yeah, so RAS. So talking about the RAS thing, so let me just talk to you as a researcher and an academic, or former academic. I don't know whether you're ever a former one, but anyway.
It's like being a recovering alcoholic. You're never not an alcoholic.
You're forever one. I get it. So so I've heard that a lot. But just tell me, is that sound neuroscience? Is that good? Is there proof? Because I know you're the kind of guy that calls out kind of BS, really. So
the reticular activating system stuff. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And not only do I know it from the research, I also know it from personal experience, because if your reticular activating system fails and you start trying to pay attention to too many things, you go crazy very, 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 very quickly. Yeah. Because your brain just doesn't have the processing capacity to deal with that. And I'll give you an illustration now. You are looking probably at the camera and at the screen, but I will put money on the fact that that's not the only thing in your office.
Yes, of course, yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff in your office. If I draw your attention to it, you know it is there. But until I draw your attention to it, your subconscious has filtered it out. So I'm sitting here, looking at you, and I've got the computer in front of me, a microphone to my left, a cup of tea, a glass of ginger
whiskey
on my wall. There's my booking system over there. There's a window up there. There's a picture that my daughter drew when she was 4 of me and her and a squirrel. But I don't notice those things. Because they're not of interest unless I am primed to look at them.
And I guess that's where people who become quite anxious and they become hyper vigilant are actually taking in too much information, aren't they? And we've all had experience of that personally, usually, but also we know people who are stressed out by every little thing in the world, and that's because they've overladen that system, right?
There are other reasons for anxiety happening, but that is one of the reasons that anxiety happens. They start to see everything as a threat because their subconscious filtering system of threats. We're heading rapidly down nerd rabbit holes here if we're not careful. Long story short, long story short, you can hack the reticular activating system by just priming it by going, yellow cars are dangerous, spot yellow cars. And all of a sudden, you will find yellow cars all over the place. It's exactly the same system as you go, tigers are dangerous, spot me a tiger.
Yeah, brilliant.
I like to think that there are no tigers in Leeds and Newcastle where you and I are, but the principle is valid.
So let's just go through those 3 things you just taught us again. So there's the David Attenborough do your own narration, then
I forgot what order I put them in. The last one was the reticular activating system, and the one in the middle was the Kennedy trick, which is to ask yourself the least boring thing, not the most interesting, but the least boring.
So narrate your day be at least ask yourself what's the least boring happened today, and enable your RAS, your reticular activation system. So
there is a fourth one.
Brilliant.
There is a fourth tool, which is the fourth one is live a life where there are stories worth telling. I mean, it's mind-boggling simple, isn't it? If you have no stories in your life, the problem is probably your life, and you should get off your backside and do something. The story you the gig you heard me do a couple of Saturdays ago, I had 3, and I rushed them because I was short of time, but I had 3 stories of things that my daughters had done.
Yeah.
That's because they're epic people. They do things that put a dent in the universe. It is not difficult to find stuff. There's a reason I am grey, by the way.
Yeah.
And my daughters are it. I'm only 30, and I've gone grey because of my daughters.
Yeah. So tell me, what thing I was really interested in was the stuff around the hero story, because you were quite honest in that, and you were talking to a lot of speakers like me, many of which either tell big hero stories, or have heard hundreds of them, where you become, and I've always felt, me and many of my colleagues have always felt, other speakers, when you get to chatting to them away from, when you can just kind of be honest, you're kind of in a bar, in the coffee shop and stuff, I've always felt uncomfortable being the star of my own stories and being the hero. So most of the stories I tell about me are the classic English humour stuff of slight self-deprecation. I know, that I'm a bit of an idiot, but that's all right, and it's quite endearing and it works. So tell us about, because actually our industry is full of people who are, big things have happened to them and they tell a big and important story, but tell us about the hero stuff, because it's complicated.
They tell a big story.
Yeah.
There's a difference between whether it's an important story. There's a difference between what is interesting and what is of interest.
Yes.
So climbing Everest backwards in flip-flops is interesting. Does it change the world in any significant way at all? Not really, no. And it just makes the audience feel a little bit insignificant because they know they could not climb Everest backwards in flip-flops or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
Then the really sarcastic joke I use on stage all the time is these people who were raised on Mars by giant ants. And then in a desperate attempt to sound interesting and relevant, they go, so if I can be raised on Mars by giant ants, you can be raised on Mars by giant ants. If you just buy this book that I happen to have written and follow these instructions. And then they finish it off with, in a desperate kind of, so here's my question to you. What giant ants are you going to kill today? And you just look at them and go, if you've got a bleep button ready for this, Lee, I need to go.
Feel free to edit yourself, Simon.
You beep! Because all that does is make the person on stage look good to themselves, and it entertains an audience, but it doesn't move the dial. And the problem we have as an industry, I say the problem we have as an industry, assuming there is only one, a problem we have as an industry is that bookers find that interesting and exciting, and audiences find that big hero story interesting and exciting, and they think that because it's interesting, it is useful.
Wow.
It doesn't change people's behaviours for longer than the 6 minutes it takes for the hormones to wear off. So there's the traditional dose hormones, the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. Those are the big neurotransmitter hormones that make you go, oh my God! But they only last for between 2 and 6 minutes. I can't remember which one is 2 minutes and which one is 6 minutes off the top of my head. But they're all 2 minutes and 6 minutes type stuff. And at the end of that time, the motivation has disappeared because it's a purely emotional, inspirational thing, not a genuine, deep-seated motivational thing. And at that point, what happens is that audiences start to resent the speaker. Now, there are exceptions to every rule. I get that. And some people go, oh my God, they're brilliant. You should see them, you should see them, you should see them. They're awesome. Because they remember the entertainment. But quite a lot of people start to resent that speaker going, yeah, I've heard that story 4 times. I felt inspired in the room. I was determined to change. I didn't.
Yeah.
And there's a sickening. This is a personal opinion, not a research opinion. So hold that in your head for the next 2 minutes.
Okay.
I think there is quite a moral problem with our industry, where we get people addicted to the big hero stories, and we make them feel worse about themselves, so they feel the need to get another round of motivation, so they come to see us again.
Okay.
And you see, and it becomes it's a good business model. It's morally bankrupt. So there's a friend of mine, a young, well, I say young, he's about 5 years younger than me, but I'm 62, so anybody younger than me feels young. And the number of times they have gone on a new diet, to lose a bit of weight, they go, I am fat, I'm overweight, I've got to do something about it. They buy the book, they buy the course, they go on the diet. It sort of works for a very short period of time because of the emotional hit of having spent 40 quid on a new app type thing.
Yeah.
It works for a week, and then the thing goes off. And then what they get is a thing from the app going, we've noticed that you've stopped making progress. Would you like to buy the upsell? Or would you,
Yeah.
So they get people addicted to coming back and what's the word? I'm going to say refurbish, I don't mean that. Restarting, if you like, with a new payment every time.
Which
and
is
big
what
hero
gyms
epic
do,
stories.
right? Gyms do that
Yeah.
all the time, don't they? And one of my little bugbears about the fitness industry, of course, is they sell gyms as weight loss things. When if you know anything about physiology, actually gyms are for strengthening yourself. The battle is won in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
It's never won
or
in
in
the
my
gym.
case, lost in the kitchen. Yeah.
There's a lot of battles in the kitchen. Some we win, and some we don't. But yeah, so
I'll
I
go
guess
even further than that. My weight loss problem is lost in the vineyard. It doesn't even get as far as the kitchen.
That's because
Yeah, you're right.
You got your own vineyard, you got a cellar, and you got your own
But
cellar.
you're absolutely right. My personal trainer repeatedly points out to me that if I go to her, and I pay her a reasonable amount of money, if I go to her trying to lose weight, there is only a limited amount that she can do.
Wow.
She can make me fitter, faster, stronger, more flexible, and she does. She does a canny good job of that compared to what I would be if I didn't give her money. But if I'm going to lose weight, it's the little incremental bits in the kitchen where you turn down the pudding. Now, a story of turning down the pudding versus a story of going to the gym, it's not such an exciting story, but that's where the changes are made.
Yeah. So let me be honest with you as a speaker. So as a motivational speaker, over the years, I think that I have probably lost out to gigs of people who have the sort of hero type story that would do the yee-haw kind of stuff. And yesterday I absolutely said in this keynote talk I was doing that I'm not that kind of guy. And I got people to think, I got them to reflect on where they're at, steps they can do. So it was very much not about me, it's about helping them. But I definitely have heard, I don't think they've told me directly, but I've definitely got a whiff from clients like, you're not exciting enough, Lee, or you don't have the big story, and so we've gone with someone else who can rev them up or something. Now, I'd rather do stuff, I think, like you, I'd rather do stuff that lasts than stuff that, like for instance, take weight loss as an example. I'd rather do stuff where people, get healthier over a period of time and maintain that health than quickly losing 10 pounds and then putting it back on in 3 weeks.
Yeah. So that's why the stories from the middle of our lives, from the, not I climbed Everest, but I went 4 days without alcohol, and here is how I did it. That kind of thing, that has the longer, just for the record, I'm making that up. That is not a true story. I have not ever gone 4 days without alcohol. But 4 days without caffeine would be an even bigger challenge. But that's the kind of thing that people relate to that makes a more long-term difference in their lives, exactly as you are saying.
So, sorry about this, but in the middle of this podcast, we seem to lose the sort of connection in some way. So we lost a little bit of Simon. So we were talking about all sorts of stuff, including storytelling and the idea of a standing ovation and the difference between having real content and then just wanting to motivate people and getting them to sort of stand up and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully it'll make sense when we join back up. Sorry for that. Technical issues. We're back in.
But of that gig, 2 minutes was rah-rah, 2 minutes was intro, 24 minutes was content. And even my intro was something I used as an example in my content. Yeah. So it's only the last 2 minutes that I did the rah-rah.
Well, just to clarify, you weren't revving up anyone. You weren't doing a fake kind of... I've definitely seen the fake standing ovation, that's for sure. Like, put your hands up if you do this, put your hands up. I do a little bit of the hands up thing at the beginning. It does help people to engage. Put your hands up. Yeah. Put your hands up if you'd like me to do more. Put your hands up if you think I'm amazing. Let's all put our hands up and let's all stand up together. And so you kind of get that...
I just want to shoot those people, honestly.
It goes in that circle. And maybe that's a style of presenting. I don't mind that. I don't want to be cynical about that. But I guess
it's a style. The research says that it doesn't work in the long term, though. That's my point.
So we're more interested in lasting effects. We're more interested in genuine change. And I think that's a big issue. Yeah, because I've spent many years speaking in schools, and I still do a little bit, not as much as I used to, but I still speak in schools several times a year. And what I'm fully aware of is that when you've got 15-year-olds in front of you, I can really easily rev them up. I can easily get them to feel great about themselves. But then the next day, when they come across an issue, their life just crumbles again. So as someone who works in schools a lot, and someone who... People come to me and say, how can I work in schools? So I always say to them, do not manipulate them. It's not a place to practice your stuff. And please don't do stuff that's going to be really unhelpful. So actually making them feel good about themselves and sending them off to a maths lesson all revved up. Not only will the teachers hate you, but actually the next morning or even that evening when they get home and their parents or someone says something to them or they hit a barrier, it just disappears into dust.
Yeah, because they think you are telling them the answer, and if it's not working, they feel that the problem is them, and that makes them feel even worse.
Which is where my Get Good stuff came from, which is the sort of the brand that I use and the stuff that I talk about, because getting good is little bit by little bit. Every day you make a little step. And even the other day I was talking to a lot of professional speakers like you were, and I was saying to you, what's one of the biggest tips you can get? And they were waiting. They want some big tip. You've been in this business for 17 years, full-time, professional. What's the biggest tip? Well, engage an audience. And then every day, just make one step to building your business. You don't have to...
Absolutely.
You have to contact 422 people a day, but just make one phone call. Drop one email a day. Yeah. And over time, that just builds up, right? So, anyway, gosh. Time is ticking on, so I'm loving this, Simon.
I was going to say, can I wind back to something you said about 5 minutes ago?
Please do.
Which was you don't like telling the big stories about yourself.
Yeah. I don't think I have many.
Big stories don't have to be about yourself. They could be about somebody else. And there's something I just want people to really think about here is who the hero of the story is makes an enormous difference. Okay. And there are four, kind of crudely speaking, I'm simplifying, right? But crudely speaking, there are four possible heroes to your story. There's yourself, so stories about me. There are stories about other people. So Google does it like this, Apple does it like that. There are stories about people in your audience, or at least people like your audience. Hold that thought, I'm going to come back to it. And then there are what I call planted stories, which are the stories you don't tell, you just imply them, and the audience tells the story to themselves. They trust themselves more than they trust you, so if you can get them to tell themselves a story, you are laughing all the way home. Mm-hmm. But there's a big note of caution I want to give. I just said I would come back to audience stories. Don't tell stories about your audience in case you trigger what's called an identity variable reaction, which is when you're so close to home, the audience goes, "Whoa, no, not no," because it feels like a challenge.
Okay. Because if you want to be a speaker, whether it's a professional or just part of your job, it's important to understand this stuff, and that's where research comes in. That's where academic research, scientific stuff helps, because we need to understand it. Sometimes, of course, it can be, you can have a piece of research and then another piece of research comes across to disprove that, and I get that stuff. But I think there's a due diligence of us as speakers and anyone who presents at all to check out some of this stuff and understand it a little bit. Even if you're just reading the abstracts of this stuff, you don't have to go into all of it. Just read it, because there's so much great stuff out there that you can find. Most of it is 90% of it's for free, and you can find it in the public record. And it's so helpful, isn't it, to understand how to present, how to communicate, and how learning actually works. So
I really urge people, if they can, just use Google Scholar to go as far back to the origins of the research as they can.
Yeah.
Because if you're just reading books about books, or God help you, blogs about blogs, you end up with misinterpretation of stuff. So the classic example is the 10,000 hours stuff. The idea that it takes 10,000 hours to master anything, but if you put 10,000 hours in, you will have mastered it. The technical adjective for that is utter tosh.
Okay.
The research says that on average it takes 10,000 hours to achieve mastery. That is not the same as Malcolm Gladwell reported in his now very famous book, the one that we all believe, that 10,000 hours will... So it takes... I would say I'm pretty damned good on the cajon, and I reckon I've put in 1,000 hours of practice. I'm rubbish at the violin, and I have put in well past the 10,000 hours. Well past the 10,000 hours. Because different things take different levels of time to master. What the research says is
people
it's
are wondering
an average
what a cajon
of
is
10,000.
now, Simon. That people are going...
A con?
What is a cajon? That's a
it
drum,
looks like
right,
a
that you sit
tea-chest.
on.
It's a drum, yeah. It looks like a tea chest. It's a Peruvian, South American drum that looks like a tea chest that you sit on and hit with your hands.
Very good. So 10,000 hours is I guess it's an averagey kind of figure. Yeah, so it's a helpful concept, but again, it's people would probably get an app, wouldn't they? And they'll say, right, I'm going to do violin. Right, I've hit me 10,000 hours now, and it still sounds like a screech, right? So it's still not great.
And as you say, you don't need to read every single damned paper. You can read summary papers, and you can read abstracts, which take you 2 or 3 minutes. Because a good abstract will be a paragraph long. A bad abstract will be pages long. But a good abstract will be a simple paragraph long.
And actually, if anything in the world, if AI was invented for anything, it's to help us to understand some of that stuff and simplify research. Because I've used it in that. You've still got to do your check-in and your balances and stuff. But I think AI excels in that area. His 14 papers, what does that actually say? What do you think about that? I typed in something the other day into... I've started using Claude instead of ChatGPT to try and test the different models out. I typed in some stuff the other day. It was based a little bit around Maslow's hierarchy of needs and other associated things. And I just put in 6 keywords. And I said, could you help me make a slide out of that? It couldn't, by the way. But I just thought for a bit of fun I had it. And when I put it in Claude, and the AI model said, are you talking about the psychological differences about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all other things? So it recognised the words that I put in and then related them and immediately gave me 6 academic things to look at using psychological kind of frameworks, which I thought was fascinating. So there you go.
It is, but 2 notes of caution.
There's always a
Secretary
caution.
of State for Health in America has just been hammered because he used AI to write a report which cited fictional research papers.
Yeah.
And the man clearly... But the second thing is, if you ask ChatGPT and other AIs to do a bio of me, they insist, absolutely insist, I have a PhD in physics from Bristol University. One of those things is true. I have a PhD.
Yes.
It's not in physics, and it wasn't from Bristol University.
You've never been
and
to
even
Bristol?
No, other than to visit friends. And even when I tell the AI, no, that is incorrect, it argues and goes, no, I've checked. I've gone to the web and checked. You definitely have a PhD in physics from Bristol University. I'm pretty freaking sure I haven't.
So yeah,
I would love a PhD in physics.
Just to clarify, when I put this stuff in, I am doing the due diligence and checking it, but it is very good at collating. It just can make stuff up, doesn't it? So I wonder whether AI isn't all it's cracked up to be at this stage, because every other speaker in the world is now an AI expert, right? So
Oh God,
we'll
yeah.
see
If it
what
was
happens.
that easy.
We will see what happens. But
Having said that, if you're using what's called a closed system AI, which is if you give it some data, so it's not looking for its own data, you give it its own data and say do something with it, they're quite powerful. So Gemini, for example, I gave it the text for that
yeah,
and said, summarize this book. And it came back summarising the book in a few hundred words better than I could. And I wrote the damn book.
I've used it for that. I put my book into it and books and said, what do you think about that? And it does pull out themes really well. And it does help with marketing and all of that kind of stuff. So it does that stuff well. But yeah, the time will tell, I think. Right, we've talked about different things. So
We've talked for a long time.
but it's great, Simon. I hope you haven't been bored, because I haven't been. I've been
God,
really
no,
interested in
no.
this.
Oh.
So just give me a
The only
little
problem is,
conclusion.
I've run out of drink, that's all.
Yeah, I need to get another tea. So give us a little conclusion for the listeners and viewers about this subject around story making. A little conclusion, and then tell us how people can find out more about what you do.
A simple cru de coeur. Don't just tell stories. Figure out the point that you're trying to make, and then look at what stories you want to use, because they are a tool and a resource, just like your slides and just like your shoes. How they find me, I've just made that up. How they find me,
Well done.
yeah, I thought so. I think it's slides and shoes. There's a bit of alliteration thing going on there. How they find me. LinkedIn is good. There are 2 Simon Rayboulds on LinkedIn. Simon Raybould is spelled Raybould. The other one is a Canadian baker. You will find out very quickly if you're talking to the wrong one. And the website is called presentationgenius.info. In my defence, I didn't name the website. I wrote a book. It became a bestseller. My marketing team went, "You're an idiot if you don't use the brand." So that's Presentation Genius. Hugely egocentric, but honestly, I promise you it wasn't my idea.
It's okay. You can relax, Simon. Dr. Simon Raybould, a good friend, a researcher, story maker. It's been wonderful to chat and catch up with you. So thank you for your time, Simon, and hope to see you again
Really
soon.
enjoyed it, man.
Cheers.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers.